In this podcast episode, we want to introduce you to our BCEN friend, Adam Sorenson. Come along as Michael Dexter and Holly Briggs talk with Adam about his nursing career, from pediatrics to trauma care to biocontainment. This episode is called Hero Dirt: Collaboration on Emerging Special Pathogens.
Hello, and welcome to the BCEN Friends podcast, where we hold interesting conversations about learning with a range of thought leaders, BCEN certification holders, and industry professionals. But most importantly, to create value and insight for you, our professional nurses across the emergency spectrum. We hope you find our discussions interesting, informative, sometimes funny, sometimes serious, and always valuable. I'm Holly Briggs, a professional development specialist at BCEN, and one of your hosts for today. I'm joined by my co-host, Michael Dexter, Director of Professional Development at BCEN. Hi, Michael.
Hello, Holly.
It's great to have you with us today. And in this episode of BCEN Friends, we have Adam Sorenson. Adam is a trauma nurse who has some unique skills and knowledge when it comes to the study of emerging pathogens and biocontainment. I've got so many questions, so I won't delay any further. Michael, could you please introduce us to our BCEN friend, Adam?
Yeah, absolutely. After graduating in 2012 with his bachelor's degree, Adam began his career as a pediatric nurse before transitioning to a role as a pediatric intensive care nurse. After a few years in the PICU, Adam shifted to working in an adult surgical intensive care unit, the Level 1 Trauma Center, where he continues to work today. Adam's professional development includes advanced training, starting with trauma nursing core course, as well as advanced trauma care and nursing, to obtaining his certification as a trauma certified registered nurse. In 2014, during the Ebola outbreak in Central and West Africa, Adam joined the Highly Infectious Treatment Team, or HITeam, at Denver Health Hospital, an all-voluntary group established to handle such crises. Denver Health was designated as an Ebola regional treatment center in 2015, and in 2021, Adam took on a part-time role as a Biocontainment Unit Nurse Educator, focusing on training, education, and preparedness for viral hemorrhagic fevers, rare respiratory viruses, and novel viruses. Additionally, Adam has served as a nurse in the Air Force Reserves for the past 5 years. Adam, welcome to the BCN and Friends podcast. We appreciate you being with us today.
Yeah, hi, Michael. Hi, Holly. And thanks to the BCEN for letting me talk about some weird or rare diseases.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. And before we jump into that, I know we talked about your career and nursing and those things, but wanted to know a little bit more, like, why did you go into nursing to begin with? And, now you're also been in the Air Force Reserve. So tell us a little bit more about your career in nursing and why you chose some of these avenues.
Yeah, I started off taking some EMT classes to be a ski patroller. Being in Colorado, living in the mountains, having some friends who did that, and then went from EMT to, I think I want to be a nurse. I really liked the medical field, found it very challenging, but also very stimulating from a mental aspect and a lot to learn. So was able to get into a nursing program after being EMT. And then from there, I jumped into, as you said, pediatrics as a pediatric nurse. And then really the side of being a trauma nurse or working at a level 1 trauma center is I thought the knowledge and skill set that I had developed translated well to serving my country. So I joined the Air Force Reserves.
Awesome. And so when I first considered going into nursing, I thought about pediatrics and ended up just going directly into a mixed adult and pediatric community ER as my first nursing job. But what made you decide to go into pediatrics? Because a lot of nurses are scared of taking care of kids.
Yeah, I think it chose me. I was fortunate enough to have a great rotation during nursing school at the same hospital. I ended up getting my job in pediatrics, and completely understand the trepidation or worry of working with kids, but I found it to be extremely enjoyable and extremely rewarding. Seeing kids really at their worst or sickest, but also seeing how fast they rebound from what they're facing, and seeing them get better and walk out was an amazing experience, and has been something that I have truly enjoyed with my time working in pediatrics.
Awesome. And so we talked about Ebola, and I remember when Ebola hit and all the things we were doing at my facility. But, at the time, what was your experience with special pathogens, and did you have any experience, or why were you drawn to working on that volunteer team when it first became a thing?
Yeah, so in 2014, when it first started gaining national news and worldwide news, a lot of us were thinking it's not a matter of if, but when a patient's going to come. And then we saw in Texas it happened. A patient presented to the emergency room, and you know that story, but figured might as well be prepared for myself to take care of a patient that ends up coming, if they end up coming to us. So I joined the team because I'd rather be ready and get familiar with all the things that entails to take care of a patient with a highly infectious disease like Ebola than to not be prepared and help tamper my worries or fears surrounding that disease, because I didn't know anything about it. I just kind of jumped right in. And where I work, it's an all-voluntary team. So it was anybody who wanted to was able to join.
Wow. That's very interesting, Adam. Not just the beginning part of your career, but then the fact that you realize like, hey, this is coming and I don't want to be caught unaware, right? So I'm going to jump in and I'm going to volunteer for this group, and I'm going to educate myself, learn from these experts, and figure out the best way for me to take on this thing that is surely coming to our hospital, right? I will also say that not many nurses find themselves collaborating with their health department. Oftentimes we're like, oh no, the health department's here. Everybody put on your P's and Q's. Also with like national education centers, like that's just not, it's not something you hear about all the time. So it makes what you do very, very unique. But I think it also opens the idea of like, maybe we should do this more often. So can you tell us a little bit about just this mashup, the work that you're doing with NETech?
Yeah, so NETech was formed out of this Ebola outbreak in 2014. Our federal government found that our hospital system in the US was not prepared to take on a outbreak of a disease like Ebola. So they started creating treatment centers, and at Denver Health, where I work, it was one of originally 10 treatment centers designated to take care of for the duration of a patient's illness who was infected with Ebola. The original 3 were the hospitals, if you research back historically, University of Nebraska, Emory, and then Bellevue Hospital in New York City, who have taken care of actual patients infected with Ebola. And from there, it's stemmed to a lot like the trauma system of care. And actually, recently, they have started the special pathogens system of care, and it reflects a lot of what the trauma system of care has developed throughout the years. Now it's a lot younger, being 2014, 2015, really the start of this. So there's still quite a bit of work to be done, but a lot has been done. And then NETech is a consortium of all of these now 13 regional treatment centers coming together, doing working groups and building out resources and assets for healthcare providers so that they can be prepared, like the type of PPE to wear, to lab test, and to the treatment of patients, not just with Ebola, but other rare diseases that we haven't or have very rarely ever seen in the US. So it's really an asset for people.
Awesome. When you look at all of the things, and I realize that it's still, as you said, the earlier phases of this entire system that's being built, but infectious diseases and pathogens can encompass a wide variety of things. And I know there's outbreaks of multiple types of infectious diseases and rare pathogens. And we hear of things like influenza every year, obviously COVID, RSV, but then there's other things that most emergency nurses in the United States don't see, which would be Ebola or malaria. And there's things on the news about monkeypox. But in terms of what you're currently doing and what you're looking at, what do you think is a big concern for the United States currently, or anything that's coming out on the horizon that you feel is important for emergency nurses to be aware of?
Yeah, Michael, that's a great question. You got to balance don't want to scare people, but it's also good to have it on the radar and knowledgeable. So, and I think a lot of people would agree that one of the biggest concerns, because it is here right now, is H5N1, otherwise known as bird flu. That is affected not just flocks of birds, but also is now in our dairy herds or cattle throughout the U.S. A few states, one of the states or Colorado, the state I live in, actually has a lot of infected herds. It is not person to person, but if we go off historically, like H1N1, things like that in the past, that if this continues to evolve, there potentially is a high risk that it's going to become person to person transmission over time. It's not, again, I want to say that it's not, but the worry is if a pig or swine were to become infected with H5N1, that's more of a portal to becoming more transmittable to humans than we're currently seeing.
So if somebody was to come in to the emergency department today and they have really varying symptoms, let's say that they're a farmer and they work with livestock, they work with crops that they produce, and they have just this wide array of influenza-like symptoms. Typically, if we needed additional help, we would, get a really good thorough history and maybe call the poison control hotline for some help on, is it potential that they got exposed to some kind of chemical that they use in their farming? Is there people that call a infectious disease hotline? Is there something that's set up to where if there was a potential for a bird flu or a monkeypox or something, that there are people ready and available to answer those type of questions?
There are, yeah, that's another good question. And that would go back to the state health department for each state. They are well aware. So if you think about H5N1, a lot of hospital systems don't have the capability to actually test down to this is the type of influenza that the patient has. So what they would do, and the protocol is for state health departments, is if a clinician tests for, but it's an H1N1 influenza, but they can't sequence it out, is to actually send that sample to the state health department who has the testing capability to sequence it out to see if it is, say, bird flu or H5N1. And then from there to provide the recommendation on treatment and what to go from there. And that's one of the knowledge gaps that I think a lot of us don't have currently, is the resources like our state health departments, our infectious disease team at wherever you work, or like your infectious disease doctor would be familiar with that process, as well as laboratorians that also are very knowledgeable in the lab itself and what should be done.
Tell you what, I am not someone who likes to get hyped up about anything, especially when it comes to like, oh, it seems really far away. But being in healthcare long enough, you realize there's a good level of preparation. There's a need to be informed and not to develop like misinformation, really going to the source and having like proper resources to draw from. So I think it's really cool that you're collaborating with these national organizations across states that are setting up these resources so that people such as myself who have questions, who are curious, but also curious with a purpose, right? I don't want to be unaware of these things. I don't want to be caught that way. And just talking about the H1N1, H5, like all of these things, again, my curiosity is very piqued. We could talk about that for a lot longer. And I think just having like a heightened awareness. But overall, if you had to give like a key piece of advice or practices that really, no matter the pathogen, that we should just kind of follow, what would that be?
That's what we call in NETEC is the identify, isolate, and inform. And the identify is really the key part, and it changes based off of what you're suspecting or gathering information. Like, for example, with the H5N1, it's simply identifying would be a question of, do you work with birds? Things like that. And then the isolation is known the type of PPE you should wear when these patients come in. And that's the unique side of it for people who are working in emergency departments, freestanding ED clinics, and that is anything and everything comes in through those doors. And it's really, you don't need to know specifically what the pathogen or what the patient has. It's more the ability to identify, hey, they have respiratory signs and symptoms. I should take my respiratory precautions, wear my PPE that correlates with the signs and symptoms the patient has. And that helps protect you. And then that also on the identification side is just knowing your resources, where you work, who to call, who to have those conversations with, so that you can get the patient the appropriate care they need in a timely manner. And I think that's all of our goals, is to get the patient better as soon as possible. I could go out. Another example would be for pediatric patients, depending on their age. Well, asking mom, dad, or the primary caregiver, what is their occupation, or how are they sick, and for how long? Just adding that extra layer of questions in there to help identify what that pediatric patient may have.
In addressing all of these pathogens, we could certainly talk about this for quite a while, because I think it's pretty interesting. And I think in my opinion, there's been a lot of waves of awareness. During COVID, we had this people that were wearing full-blown suits from head to toe. And then a few months later, it was hard to get some people to even wear a mask. And so it's varied a lot over time. And, you mentioned identifying and being able to isolate, but on a typical day in the health system, when there is so much back and forth, and as you just mentioned, it might not even be the patient themselves, but maybe a close family member that was exposed, and now others are secondarily exposed. How do you feel about just the overall way that PPE is utilized in hospitals now? Do you feel like we're kind of where we need to be? Do you feel like it should be used more than it is currently, or what are your thoughts on that?
Michael, that is a question that I think about a lot. And I go back to, say, nursing school, when the first couple of weeks of a lot of nursing programs, they quickly push everybody through PPE, and then you don't talk about it again for the rest of the time in nursing school, but you're expected to have this in-depth knowledge on the type of PPE you need to wear. I think we have a lot of work to do to educate nurses and just healthcare staff in general on PPE. Like, do you know the level gown you're wearing? Like, say your level gown is your standard patient care gown. A lot of us know they're like, or use the yellow gowns that you can tear off. Well, if those get wet, how long do you have until it seeps through that gown? I didn't know this until I stepped into this educator role. The type of standards that our PPE has and what that equates to when you're doing patient care. So for a trauma patient, they come in, one of the first things we do is put on PPE before they even arrive, right? And then you get blood on your PPE. Well, how quickly should we change that? If you're wearing that level 1 or level 2 gown, you have 5 minutes before it goes through. Whereas if you're putting on, like, say, equates to a sterile surgical gown, you have hours before that soaks through. So how many of us know that? I didn't know that. Maybe I'm projecting a little bit, but I think that's really important, because that's equipment and stuff we use every day. And I am very sensitive to, since COVID, kind of the thought process around PPE. And I think what we've been doing at Neotech, and we have some great people who have been advocating on getting people who actually wear the PPE to be at the table to help let the manufacturers know how uncomfortable it can be, how it's not necessarily something that was made for healthcare personnel, but more for other industries. And then it was adopted because of the standards to healthcare. So I think getting at the table and working and getting more comfortable equipment is extremely important for people to be wearing it and feel good about it.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and I appreciate you making that comment, because it's just vitally important that the people helping make those decisions are the people that are actively involved in that care. And one thing that we like to ask everybody that comes on the podcast is if there is a particular person or a particular time in their career that really impacted them. Did it change the trajectory of what you were doing? And maybe it was a nursing school instructor, maybe it was a family member, maybe it was a person that you cared for. But just out of curiosity, is there any particular person or particular time that really impacted you as an individual or as a clinician?
Yeah, it's through nursing school. And then I was lucky enough to work with, her name is Sean Anderson, Dr. Anderson. She brought me on and I started working as a faculty at nursing school. And she did my peds rotation. And then after that has really been somebody I've been able to talk through kind of the career field of nursing, kind of different stages of nursing, being a new grad to more experienced. And I think we have different thoughts and feelings as time goes on about the career of nursing and our comfort level of being a nurse, and having somebody to really talk through feelings and what you see, and also provide that support of the emotional aspect of being a nurse. Because we see things and we do things that are very stressful and take emotional tolls, and being able to take that and learn from it, grow from it, but not let it weigh us down is something that I've learned a lot from her.
It's so good to hear that not only did you have that person there like at the beginning of your career, but there's someone who you've been able to keep connected with and grow with. I think that starting off as a new nurse, I didn't realize how much support I needed. I felt like when I was in nursing school, oh gosh, it's so hard. I need so much support, right? And then when you get out, you just have this idealistic view that like, I'm a nurse and it's just kind of smooth sailing from here. And little do you realize that you've kind of actually just gotten off the dock and now you're out there and the water can be a little stormy at times. And to have someone kind of come alongside you and be your person from the beginning, middle, now to where you're at in your career, and be able to talk about those things and truly not just the political ins and outs and like the tedious aspects of nursing, but just truly the emotional toll, like you said, the stress of nursing, the things that we see that really can stick with us. And if we're not careful, those can become unhealthy parts of the way that we cope with things. And so I love hearing that. It makes me so grateful for those nurses who are a little bit further on in their career, who decide to actually, turn around and give back and mentor and be that person for those who are just starting out. I would hope that they feel the gratitude and the thankfulness for it. But I often know that it usually starts out and they're like, you know what, I'm just going to do this because it was either done for me or I wish it had been done for me. And I think that's just, it makes me just so happy to hear that. So thank you for sharing all of that, Adam. I really appreciate it. And I know that I'm encouraged by it. So the fun part is this rapid fire questions that I get to ask you. Why do we ask these rapid fire questions? Because we just want to get to know you a little bit better. So we've heard about all the things that you're doing, kind of your career, nursing, all of that. So now we just want to kind of hear about some of your favorites. If there was a career outside of healthcare that you'd like to try, what would it be?
Well, it's not outside of healthcare, but I think I said before, out ski patrol.
Perfect. He would go back to the ski patrol. I mean, honestly, I've seen some movies about ski patrol. I don't know how real they are to life. But if I was a person who skied, which I'm from basically the Gulf of Mexico, so we water ski, we don't ski on snow, but it looks really cool. Like you kind of ski around and save people's lives. And don't y'all have like a dog or something? I feel like that's fun too. So,
There are a few dogs. I mean, yeah, how fun would that be to just be able to go ski every day and get paid for it?
yeah, like I said, don't ski on snow, but sounds like it'd be fun. So, all right, I have 3 categories about your favorites. We'll kind of go through them. And again, these can be like favorite of all time, or they can be something you're kind of currently into. So, favorite book.
Oh, the body. It's also healthcare, and it's really interesting reading kind of the historical context of how our healthcare has basically become to what it is now.
Hmm. I'm going to write that one down. One, because I'm always interested in a good book. That's just true. But I also find that there are some healthcare books that have been recommended that I've really enjoyed. So thank you for that. Now it's going on my list. All right, favorite movie, TV show, or it can be like some binge-worthy series that you would recommend to us.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to pass. I
That's fine too.
honestly can't speak to much of TV.
I like that. I like that. You had your book like as a go-to. And he's like, I have too many books, good books to read. So I understand that. Okay, favorite musical artist.
I really like the Luminaires and also Mumford and Sons.
Classic. Years ago, I discovered Mumford and Sons and really liked one of their albums. I probably listened to it on repeat. And then I hadn't listened to them for like probably the last 8 years. And then I had another podcast guest talk about Mumford and Sons, and I was like, let's go. And so I went back and listened to them, and I was like, gosh, they're good. So you know what? I'll probably be listening to them later today. So thank you for that. What is a self-care go-to or a hobby outside of healthcare that just helps you reset, kind of get back to yourself?
Yeah, they part of the reason I said Mumford and Sons is because it's one of my go-to playlists for mountain biking. That is my stress release, being out in nature and just getting a good workout.
Okay, what are we talking about? Like when you say mountain biking, as someone who doesn't have a lot of mountains where they live, like how many miles are we going on our jaunt of resetting? Like, what are we talking here, Adam?
I think it depends on the trail and where you're at, but we're talking 3, 4+ miles. It also depends on how much elevation gain there is, which for where I'm at in life it equals a shorter ride.
Yeah, I'm like, if you were like, we're going straight up the mountain, I'd be like, I will do half a mile and you can go up and then you can meet me on the way down. I'm sure the downslope of the mountain is it's really more my speed, honestly, I think. So thank you for that. Thanks for sharing all of your favorites with us. If our audience wanted to follow you online or reach out to you, where can they do that at?
Yeah, we at Denver Health, we have a website for people if they're interested or have any questions, they can reach out to Denver Health website, and then at that website there's our biocontainment unit subsite. You can always go to NETEC website if you have any questions or anything about specific information.
We'll put both of those in the Denver Health link as well as the NETEC website on the blog for this episode. So people can, if they have questions or looking for resources, they will have some things to go off of. So thanks for sharing that, Adam.
Yeah, Adam, I just wanted to let you know it's been really great chatting with you today. I think special pathogens are really interesting because they're an ever-changing target, and there seems to be different ones that come out at different times, and then there's the faithful ones that are always here that we get so used to, and we sometimes put our guard down a little bit. So it's great to chat with you and talk about the different things that you're doing to promote that and promote the care of individuals that are affected by these, and also the care of nurses and healthcare providers that need to make sure that they're vigilant to understanding them. And so appreciate you just sitting down and chatting with us today and talking about your passion for trauma care, pediatric care, and special pathogens, and appreciate all the work that you're doing. Thank you for sharing it with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, I want to take this time to thank Adam for joining us for this episode of BCEN Friends. Thank you, Adam, for sharing your insight, your expertise, your experiences in nursing with us. It is often said that influence is having a seat at the table. And when it comes to biocontainment, I'm proud to know that you're representing nursing and advocating for future patients and healthcare teams. We truly appreciate you and all that you're doing. And to all of our listeners, we hope you will stay tuned as we continue with BCEN Friends and bring you new, meaningful content and perspectives. If you have a suggestion for an episode, please email us at bcn@bcn.org. I'm Holly Briggs, here with Michael Dexter, and on behalf of the entire BCEN team, we thank and celebrate you for all that you're doing as professional nurses across the emergency spectrum. Until next time, we are out.